Coming up, Pennywise is back. Join us as we break down its Welcome to Derry. Stay tuned.
All of the tunnels are underground, where none of the children will ever be found. They wandered away to join the show and lost their way in the world below.
Welcome to the Morgue, where we dissect the latest and greatest in the world of entertainment. I am your host, Arturo Padilla, and with me always is Mr. Nick Valdez. Before we get started, do not forget to subscribe down below and hit the thumbs up on the video. Tex.
We've got a big one this edition with It. Welcome to Derry. Howdy, everybody. Howdy, Arturo. I am so excited to get into this. This is a new chapter in the It saga that started with It chapters 1 and 2, directed by Andy Muschietti, who is now developing a TV version of that with HBO, which is sort of like, okay, you hear HBO, you hear TV series, you hear Stephen King, you hear, and we've had some recent run-ins with Stephen King and HBO with the releases like, what was the one with the vampires or so? Yes, Salem's Lot. That was kind of like, it was kind of whack, but had some cool ideas.
Yeah.
But then, one of the big things is like it had a cool kid protagonist, and like it's stuff like that where you're like, okay. And that's kind of what It Welcome to Derry is. It's a natural extension of parts 1 and 2, takes place 27 years before with a new generation of kids, or a previous generation of kids.
A prior generation, yes.
Yes, in the 1960s. And these kids are now dealing with Pennywise, but at the same time, we're also learning about his lore in general, about how he came to Earth, why he's in Derry, why he might be after certain individuals compared to others. And it's all kind of unfolding, because one of the big things about It Welcome to Derry, before we even get into it, before we get into spoilers, before we even get into the review, is that it is tied into chapters 1 and 2. So it's probably best beforehand to have experience with those movies before jumping into this new extension of the story, because this is continuing that bigger story, even if it is set years before.
Yeah, Tex. I at first was very apprehensive about the entire thing. I'm pretty sure you guys can go back to the archives and hear us talk about the teaser for this. We were very unsure as to what we were going to get here, because It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2 were technically a remake of the miniseries that popped up back in the 80s. So we were like, where are they going to take this? What kind of story are they going to develop? It was quite interesting to see where everything kind of ended up. And honestly, folks, I think they hit it right on the head, man. They managed to find a way to tie new lore into an existing portion of the story, along with new characters that also tie into the It Chapter 1 and 2, like Tex was mentioning. So it's very interesting that they came up with this story, because as we go through the episodes, we go through a lot of twists and turns, right off the bat. I'm pretty sure we spoke about here on A Coming Attractions in episode 1, we get a crazy scene in a movie theater where there was a lot of unexpected deaths. And from there, we just keep the ball rolling in terms of what is going on here. So the initial lore of Pennywise and what exactly happened gets introduced and gets unraveled here in this show. So technically it is an origin story of Pennywise, right? This is pretty much what It Welcome to Derry is a vehicle for, which honestly, Tex, I don't know. I'm very curious how many times they had to go back and rewrite and rework things, because to find the story they did, I just wild.
Yeah. And so now getting into it, like spoiler free, I would say like check it out. This is definitely like this is definitely a pay for it kind of level of, before we even give it like our full like spoilery response to this. It's just like, like if you have HBO Max or have access to it, this is definitely one of those shows where you kind of get it for. This is good stuff. Especially if you like It chapter 1 and 2. And with chapter 2, it's definitely weaker of the two. And, you know, it's like, oh, okay, they just kind of needed to finish the story. And it was as good as it was, but also, yeah, like not compared to chapter 1. Welcome to Derry thankfully kind of brings that vibe back of chapter 1. You have your kid adventure, you have your kids investigating some weird thing going on in their town. And in the first episode, you have death, you have kid death, you have like, you get kids who you think are getting set up to be the protagonists of the new series, only to find out that they're dead by the end of the pilot. And from then on, it's just kind of like, you think that's going to be the big turn? No, there are actually much bigger twists and turns throughout the whole thing. And
yeah, that was just the tip of the iceberg. And what a tip of the iceberg that was. And as the episodes keep going, they try to one up themselves in terms of gore and horror visuals, and they do a very good job of that. It does kind of taper off a little bit in the middle of the season, but they are just waiting, and you know the pot's just boiling and simmering there, waiting for Pennywise to show up in the later episodes. But in the first 3 episodes, you get some really gnarly visuals that completely kind of just solidified my viewing of the show. I was like, you know what? This is a must watch for me, because the amount of work that they did with practical and CG on these visuals was just stunning and legit horrifying and scary kind of stuff. If you guys are watching on YouTube, this is one image right now that appears. I think it's an episode.
I think this is the second episode. Yeah, it's literally Lily, like the next episode. Yeah,
Lily's in the supermarket and she's having one of these like Pennywise trips, pretty much, I like to call them. And she sees her dad in like a pickle jar, and this is what she sees. And it's like talking to her and moving, and it's just like horrifying.
Yeah,
and this is nothing in comparison to some other stuff that happens in the show.
Yeah, like, and this is the same episode where, you know, so Lily, you know, she's Lily Bainbridge. She's the main character you meet at first, who she's got a past. She spent some time in the asylum before coming back to town, and, you know, she's just trying to integrate back into school. But then, you know, her friends kind of pull her into this weird stuff going around town because their friend Maddie disappears. So they're trying to figure out what happened to Maddie. And in investigating that brings her into the world of Pennywise and all this wild stuff that's happening. And then you have Ronnie, who's another little girl caught in the outskirts of it, whose father ran the theater that these kids were in when they got massacred. And so now her dad's like, there's a whole thing going on with her dad. And you have Ronnie, who in that same episode where Lily deals with the pickle, Pennywise shows up like as her mom, trying to like bring her back into her womb. And it's like, it's just gnarly.
It is
like,
wild.
It's good evil stuff. Like it's stuff where you're like, oh, that's such like a wicked idea of like, it's that kind of good. It's that satisfying horror fan, right? Where you're like, it's the horror fan in you where you're like, oh, gotta respect how nasty of an idea this is that you're doing to a character, and you're pulling it off, and it looked good. It looked good visually. It's just that some of the episodes, like, it does turn it, like, while episode 1 was like, it felt cinematic, and by the end of it, you're like, oh wow, this is a full story. And episode 2 has some good visuals and gnarly evil stuff. Like Arturo said, they do kind of, it does turn into a TV show like mid-season of like, oh, okay, they're kind of holding back on doing wicked Pennywise stuff for a while because some of the CG is a little wonky, some of the transformations are a little bit iffy. But then once Pennywise gets into it, you're like, oh, this is what they were saving the budget for. They were smartly did so, but that is something of note, where it's like there are a couple episodes in the middle where you're like, oh, not necessarily Pennywise developing, but also the stories that they do focus on and some of the side plots don't always work, right? Like there's the whole thing with like Arturo said, you're expanding on the Pennywise lore, but at the same time, you're also getting the military part of it, which is very Stephen King-y of it. It's a very Stephen King part of the story where like the government, once again, the government's like, oh, let's turn this alien monster into a weapon of the government.
Yeah.
And then their plan didn't also make sense for the government, right? Where it's like, oh, we have to use it to train others to be scared or something. It's just kind of nonsense.
It
kind of falls
it was
apart.
just there in order to move things
Yeah.
on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's very muddy situation there.
It is.
Like Tex said, like the army was trying to harness the power of Pennywise in order to use its fear tactics against its enemies and all this other stuff. It was very like, what?
Yeah,
it was
it was mostly to get the Hamlin family involved.
Yeah.
With Leroy Hamlin as the guy in the military, like at the center of this, because something in his brain doesn't like allow him to feel fear, which is also something that is debatable over the course of the episodes.
Very.
Yeah, because he isn't like the guy himself, like Giovanna Depo, sorry if I mispronounced your name, but like he's talented, and there are moments
awesome.
in this series where you're like, yo, he's really bringing it. But also, I don't think it's his fault, but there are some times where you're like, oh, Hamlin's feeling fear, and you're like, isn't it
like I thought you were supposed to be like Daredevil, the man without fear?
Yes, yes,
and that gets exposed. That continuity gets exposed rather quickly. I think in episode 4, where they're finally in the sewers, looking for Pennywise and these shards. He gets into a Pennywise trip, and it's like, wait a minute, I thought you're specifically here because this shouldn't affect you. And boy, that it affected him plenty.
Yes, and it really messed with his head. And at the same time, it's a cool scene, cool moment, good moment for character development. But on the other hand, you're thinking about, oh wait, it's that little itch. And unfortunately, that's kind of the whole military subplot is like, to me, I don't think any of it works. Like Arturo said, it's mostly just to get Pennywise from point A to point B and to get him where he is by the end of the season. But outside of that, the other subplots absolutely work for me. Like I think the smartest thing, Arturo, I'll lob it to you now, is that I think the smartest thing in Welcome Derry does is that it kind of scratches that Lovecraft Country itch. Remember Lovecraft Country? We were like, yo,
boy.
It was like, it was sci-fi, it was horror, but it was also black sci-fi horror. It was like, these are black characters and black stories and black people telling the stories. And it's like, this is a very like culturally significant horror for them. And Welcome to Derry has that same vibe because it's this black family moving into Derry and dealing with what a black family did deal with in the 1960s, right? On top of the Pennywise situation.
Yes, there are a lot of race relations and racial tension throughout the entire show. I'm pretty sure we mentioned that when we first spoke about Welcome to Derry in our coming attractions. But like Tex was mentioning, this does scratch that Lovecraft Country itch, because Lovecraft Country, yes, it was good, but it was very different, and it was kind of just a little bit everywhere. But this one is very focused, and it's definitely a black story because Hanlon and his family are the protagonists. You have Hanlon, you have Will, his son, and you have his wife, which I forget her name, who's also a very strong character in this show and is showing off her character strength throughout the show. She used to be an activist in the South, where they came from, and she's not staying quiet when she sees injustice. So this whole show is a black show, which is awesome because that definitely remedies the itch for sure. Because I was enjoying Lovecraft Country in the first couple episodes, but then it took some weird turns.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it gets messy, right? It gets messy. But when it first started, it was like, no, this is grounded. We're using this grounded story to tell this sci-fi horror experience, to elevate it, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly it here, because at the same time, you also get the indigenous people who have been robbed of their land, and now the military is coming in further into their land. And at the same time, through the indigenous side of the story, you figure out the it stuff. You figure out the Pennywise origin. You're like, oh, they sealed him within Derry, essentially, with like it's super cool, and like it's a cool explanation. Maybe there's an entire episode about that origin. You're like, oh, okay, maybe it was like, oh, I don't know if it went a little too long, but it's like,
that episode in particular, that story definitely was a bit in depth, you can say. It did take its sweet time. You know, it was a lot. They gave you a lot of
Yeah.
information. It literally was the story of the alien that kind of took over Pennywise the clown, the person who played Pennywise the clown. And then we get that story as well, right? Of
Yes.
Pennywise and of Pennywise the person and his daughter and his kind of stay in the circus and what happened there, because his daughter, who plays a nurse in the psychiatric hospital where Lily was at and formed a strong bond with Lily, she turns out to be twist everybody, the daughter of the man who was Pennywise the clown before he was kind of taken over by this alien entity. And that's a whole crazy little side story there that could have gotten very out of hand, but
Yeah.
Pennywise remedies that very well in the
Yeah.
episode, in my opinion.
Yeah, and because the way Pennywise himself treats it, right? It's like, oh
Yes.
no, he is a monster. He's an
Yes.
otherworldly monster who only cares about himself. And it's very interesting because it rides that line, right? It gets right to the tipping point of like, okay, this is too much. But then it's like, no, okay, he's a horror movie monster. And like it all works out. And this is part of like the military stuff might not work, but like everything else around it works. Like you have a great core cast of kids, which once again, we say this every time. It's like, yo, like these, like when you're able to get like kids who can really hold their own in these kinds of situations, in these kinds of stories, these kinds of hefty stories too, you're like, okay, this is the next generation of talented actors that we're going to start seeing, right? Like your McKenna Graces, your Anya Taylor-Joys, you're like, oh, okay, these kids who are going to blow up. And that's everyone in Welcome to Derry. This entire kid cast is great. Like they have to deal with quite a lot and kind of pull off a lot of weight. Like especially like Blake Cameron James, who plays like Will Hanlon, cutest little boys I've ever seen, dude. Like there's one scene like in his intro episode where he's like, oh, maybe it's just stardust or something like that. I'm just like, yo,
he
the
loves
way
science, which is awesome.
yeah, it's like, yo, I was like, this kid, I was like, that is the cutest little boy. But it's also manipulative and like that, oh, I swear to God, they hurt that little boy. You know what I mean? It's such like a good move. But this is all to say, like, cast is great, everything about it worked out, and then it wouldn't have worked out without Pennywise, right? I think when you get down to brass tacks, Arturo, let's talk about the Pennywise of the situation.
Yeah, just before we get into Pennywise, and this is a great transition into Pennywise, chapter 1 worked very well because of the kids and the actors, the children actors in that movie. And it's the same thing here. The children make this work. And they make this work because, the fear of clowns and the fear that Bill Skarsgård is able to just portray through this character Pennywise really impacts more if it is just children that are being directly impacted for the most part. Here in Welcome to Derry, we see some of the adults also being affected by Pennywise. We see Hanlon, we see Halloran, who's the infamous character from The Shining that pops up. It just happens to work better with kids. And like Tex was saying, this story and show, just like It Chapter 1, is successful because of the children there. And Bill Skarsgård is the perfect foe for these children just because of his portrayal of this clown. And the fact that a lot of times these children, their fear on camera is legit because Bill Skarsgård is doing such an incredible job with the character. And oh, how important it is to have Bill Skarsgård back as Pennywise. I think if he was not a part of it, this would not have been successful. And I think if Andy Muschietti was not a part of this production, I don't think Skarsgård would have been available either. Because I think the involvement of Muschietti had Skarsgård interest peak because it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm still working with the same guy here who who got the ball rolling in the first place.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Like it's a very smart production choice to have the like, whether it was his idea or not, whoever like allowed the director behind the other movies to also oversee the show was a smart move, considering that Chapter 2 was like 5 years ago, or maybe even more at this point. I think it's been a long time since Chapter 2. So
it's
like
been a while.
Yeah, and at this point, he's even talking about doing more seasons, but also kind of moving back the clock. So the next one will be like in the 40s or something, and then the one before that will be like in the 1900s or something. Like, so I think like just having that through line and having that connected tissue really helps, because then you're like, oh, every reveal we get here actually still kind of makes sense for what we see later in those other movies, and vice versa, which so we'll get into the biggest spoiler of all, because we kind of do have to just address this a little bit just to kind of like bring the conversation whole. So turns out when they defeated Pennywise in Chapter 2, he then kind of time traveled to the 1960s, and so the kids he is targeting now, and now it makes sense because Will Hanlon, as we said, we've been throwing around the name Hanlon a lot. Hanlon is the last name of one of the people in Chapter 1. That's one of the kids' names in Chapter 1, last name. And so we've been throwing around Hanlon a lot. When you hear Hanlon in the other one, you hear Hanlon in this, you're like, oh, it's just some ancestor, some great-great-grandfather or whatever, right? But no, it's legit. Pennywise came back to kill the kids who would eventually give birth to the kids who killed him in the future. And as he explains in the finale, time doesn't move the same for him. Like, it's all, whether it's the past, present, or future, it's all just him existing. And it's such like a wild reveal that like not only puts Welcome to Derry in a whole new context, because you're like, oh, this is legitimately a prequel to everything, but then also, oh, it actually is a sequel to the movies, right? So it's like, it all works on those levels. And by the time you get to that in episode 8, you've already been through so much with these characters. You're like, yo, this is the wildest thing. And you're like, oh, this is multiple generations of people fighting against Pennywise. Like these families who are left to fight. Like one of the characters, turns out Marge, it turns out she's the one who ends up being Richie Tozier's mom, who's Finn Wolfhard in Chapter 1 and Bill Hader in Chapter 2. And it's like, oh, that's wild, right? You're like, oh, okay. And then
it's no wonder she's exactly. But yeah, dude, like that was such a wild twist, and this clown is so vindictive. I love it.
Yeah, that makes him a better antagonist too, right? Because
it's like, oh my god, I hate you guys so much. I'm gonna go to the past and kill your parents, bro.
Yeah,
that way you're never even born, dude.
Yeah, that's
he legit was like Tupac's hit him up, on his headphones.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut out your whole bloodline, bro. Before you even, I'm not even giving you a chance to breathe. Like this,
he was like, my clown show. Make sure all your kids don't grow.
Yeah, and that's such like a dope antagonist thing, right? Because it's like, because Pennywise is always just like
evil.
Yeah, he's just a good movie monster, right? Of like, he uses your fears to scare you, right? But now it's like, no, he's actively going against the ones who killed him. So it's like this is a path of vengeance, but also you would never know it because he's still just having stupid, evil fun along the way, right? He'll kill anybody who gets in his way. That's
he'll kill anybody, and he'll eat their brains right in front of you, which is awesome. You get a lot of brain eating, which is fantastic, man.
Best kill, right? Was he holds a guy's head, chops the guy's head off, but then the rest of the body falls away, and he just eats the top of the head.
He eats it like Rafiki in Lion King. He's like, it's time, and he just takes a bite out of it. You know what I mean?
It's so cool.
So
man.
It's so awesome, like because throughout the show, like they definitely impressed in episodes 1, 2, and 3. But like I mentioned earlier, they had a lull in terms of like crazy action, set pieces in the middle there, but they were saving their budget for episode 7 for the huge reveal of Pennywise and Bill Skarsgård, and then into episode 8 where they had to do more crazy Pennywise, like clown transformation gimmicks, and honestly, it looked great.
Yeah.
They were so smart in saving their budget for that, because they used a lot of practical stuff in the beginning and then filled it up with some CG. But then the Pennywise CG looked so theater quality that it
Yeah.
really made a big impact in terms of the story, man. I was really impressed. But again, I was impressed with the whole story, with the whole show. From episode 1, the pilot just captivates you and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't expect any of this. I am definitely in, because this looks different. And I'm so glad that we stuck with it, Tex, because it definitely rewarded us at the end. And I think the folks at home will definitely enjoy the same as we did. Because if you guys, again, this is for it fans, okay? This is for it fans.
Yeah.
If you guys
Yeah.
aren't fans of Pennywise, I have to say that. If you guys aren't fans of Pennywise, then you might not dig this. But again, I go back to what I said earlier about the kid action and the kid acting kind of carrying the movie and the show. And it's the same thing here. So it might bring you in because of that kid adventure.
You know what, Arturo? If you're watching this, you're watching our review here, you're listening on the podcast feeds, however you're getting this. If you're watching like Stranger Things and you're like, oh man, you let's see, you're listening to this after you happen to watch the Stranger Things finale, right? Or like you just watched volume 2 and you're like, man, this is whack. Or you're like looking at Millie Bobby Brown's 11, who's like, oh, is she supposed to be 12 or 30? And you're like, oh, this is tough. You're watching that and you want that magic back of Stranger Things like season 1.
Man.
Watch
we'll have a conversation
Welcome
about that down the line for sure.
Yeah, like watch it. Welcome to Derry, because this is the magic. This is kid adventure horror with an additional like cultural thing through it. Like there are elements of that, right? There's elements of that humanity. There's a really gruesome episode right in the middle, like Arturo saying, like around, I think it is episode 7, the black spot, whatever episode that is. It's like, yo, gruesome stuff, but also it's very grounded evil too on top of that. So it's like, oh, and then Pennywise just happens to be there too, to like, it's one of those hat on a hat kind of situations,
add to
right?
it, exactly. To add to the absolute like racial tensions and the natural chaos of the times. There's Pennywise just feeding
like,
off of this fear. It's such a like evil monster thing to just like show up at one of the lowest points of the story, like in terms of just like emotion, right? And he's just there basking in this like fear, and it's so awesome.
So it uses all of this to elevate it. And I think, like I said, just wrapping my point, the only problems it has is when it gets real TV about it, when you get those episodes in the middle that are like, okay, this is clearly TV timing, and you're like, oh, that's clearly TV CG budget. And you get the military for like half an episode, you're like, all right, this is definitely like TV military plotting and padding, and you're like, all right, let's just keep it moving. But once you like it really is just trust us and just kind of make it through. I know this is a big ask because you watched episode 3 and you're like, yeah, this is all right, but no, just stay invested, watch these kids, like let it tell its story, and by the time you get to the end of it, you'll be like me going, all right, I'm in for season 2. Let's see what the second one
Exactly. I feel the same way. I'm excited for season 2, and I'm curious as to what they're gonna come up with now. And you know what? At this point, bring it on. I'm ready. All that said, folks, you know how we do it over here at the Morgue. There is always stay away from it, which means do not watch this thing at all. Do not bother. There's wait for it. Meaning you can wait for it to drop and watch in the comfort of your own home. And there is pay for it, meaning you get the streamer immediately or you pay for a ticket. And Tex, I will go first in this one, just off the bat. I am super impressed with the story and the characters and the visuals. And to top it off, we had Skarsgård, man. And like you said, if Skarsgård, man, was not involved, it would have been a whole different thing. But he kind of ties everything together. And he really is so good at this portrayal that he's literally just like an iconic monster now. And for that, I will say pay for it. Tex, what say you?
I'm in the same boat. I'm also pay for it. I said this a little bit back before we even got into full conversation about it and spoilers, but yeah, like it's something you try out HBO Max for. Try and find someone who's got a password they can lend you or something, or watch it however you can. But this is kind of like, yeah, like especially if you like those first ones, and if not, like if you haven't seen it at all, like if you didn't see the 2017 It or Chapter 2, go check those out, dude. Like those are good movies. Like honestly, go watch those before you even try to jump into this. That's the one thing I will say. Yeah,
because if you enjoy those, then for sure you will probably dig the show It Welcome to Derry. And folks, thank you so much for listening. This is The Morgue, where we dissect the latest and greatest in the world of entertainment. I am your host, Arturo Padilla, along with my buddy, Mr. Nick Valdez. A big shout out goes to you guys for listening, and a big shout out goes to Delvirus always for the artwork he's provided throughout the years. Do not forget, you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast streams. Like, subscribe, and share always. And remember, it is a scary world out there, but we are here to walk you through it.